Hello everyone, welcome to Botany option channel for UPSC examination. In today's video, we are going to see the agencies of pollination, and in that we are only focusing on the Anemophily. As you know, there are various agencies of the pollination which can be found in the seed plants, but out of them we are only focusing on the Anemophily. Alright. So before starting the video, I request you to join the Telegram channel of the same name, that is the Botany optional for UPSC examination, on the Telegram platform. There we regularly upload the PDF of these videos and link related with these videos. So make sure to join that channel so that you will not miss any study material relating with the botany subject. Alright. So let's learn about the Anemophily. Now let's first consider the meaning of the word Anemophily. Now Anemophily, this word is made up of two words. First word is the Anemone, which means wind, and Phily, which literally means loving. That is the wind loving. That is, the pollination which occurs with the help of wind is known as the Anemophily. That is, by using the wind, the anther from the flower is traveled to the another flower and land on that stigma, which results in the pollination. This type of pollination is known as the Anemophily, in which the wind plays an very important role. That is, the transfer of pollen grains through the wind is described as Anemophily, and plants as described as Anemophilous plants. That is, those plants which shows the Anemophily, such a plant, are known as the Anemophilous plants. The example for these Anemophilous plants are the sugarcane, wheat, maize, etc. All these plants are the Anemophilous plants in which the pollination occurs with the help of wind. So, while talking about the Anemophily, the first word which will come to your mind is the wind. That is, the wind helps to transfer the pollen grains from anther to the stigma of another flower, which literally called as the Anemophily because it occurs with the help of wind. Now, the literal definition for this is the transfer of pollen grains through the wind is famously called as the Anemophily. And the example for the Anemophily are the wheats, maize, and sugarcane. All right. The Anemophily is considered as the most primitive type of method for the pollination and mostly used by the plants that produce the unisexual flowers. Now this makes sense. The Anemophily is a very primitive type of method for the pollination purposes. This is because the wind is always there for the reproduction, while the animals which are used for the pollination are evolved simultaneously. But wind, as an abiotic type of pollinator, is always available in the nature, and that is why this is a very primitive type of pollination, which is literally called as the Anemophily. So you should remember that the Anemophily is a very primitive type of method used for the pollination purposes, and it is mostly used by the unisexual flowers. As you know, this is obvious. Unisexual flowers either bears the carpels or stamens. Out of these two, one is always absent, and due to this, the self-pollination has no chances to occur, and the other methods of the pollination plants has to acquire. In such a condition, wind pollination gives an option to pollinate the flower, that is to transfer the pollen grains from anther to the stigma. And that is why this type of pollination is quite famous among the unisexual flowers. All right. Now let us consider the floral adaptations in the Anemophilous flowers. As you know, the Anemophilous flowers largely rely on the wind for their pollination purpose. So in order to get pollinated by using the wind, these flowers develop certain floral adaptations. That is, these Anemophilous flowers show some particular adaptations for the Anemophilous type of pollination. So we will consider them one by one. The very first is given here, that these flowers are small, without bright color, nectar, and fragrance. Now, if you think from the evolutionary point of view, this is very obvious because these flowers tend to be small because it is not a complete flower, right? It is not complete flower. It lacks male or female organ, right? And they are produced in a very numerous number. That is, their number is very high. Due to this high number, their size always remains the small. And these flowers are without the bright color, nectar, or fragrance. As you know, the bright color, then the nectar, and the fragrance, all these things are used to attract the insect, which is occurs in a insect pollination. Now, as these plants are wind pollinated, that is, these plants are anemophilous plants. These plants does not require the things which attract the insects such as the bright color, nectar or the fragrance. All these things are never needed by the anemophilous plants because they are dependent on wind for their pollination purposes, and that is why they are never bright colored, they do not have any type of nectar or they do not show any fragrance. All right, so this is the first floral adaptation adapted by the anemophilous plant to proceed for the wind pollination. All right, now the second floral adaptation is that the petals are green and highly reduced. As you can observe in this picture, this is a wheat picture in which the flowers are green in color, that is their petals are green in color and they are highly reduced. Again, they are not brightly colored to attract the insect. These green colors are in addition to the photosynthetic activity because the green petals can perform the photosynthesis. So this is an advantage of having the green colors. On the other hand, having the bright colored flower has no advantage for the anemophilous plants because their pollination is not dependent on the insect, but their pollination is always dependent on the wind. So the anemophilous plants which are dependent on the wind for their pollination do not require the bright color. So they have the petals which are green in color and they can also perform the photosynthesis. All right. Plus, they are highly reduced. If you consider the any flower, if the size of the petals is large, then there will be the distraction for the landing of the pollen grains, right? In order to land the pollen grains on the stigma, the petals should not be there or they should be spread below the flower. So the anemophilous plants have such adaptability that they highly reduced their petals. That is, petals are literally reduced to the very low level, and this exposed their stigma in the air so that the pollen grains can land on this stigma as soon as they came from the wind. All right, so this is the reason why they has the highly reduced petals. Now the next floral adaptations in the anemophilous flower is that when flowers are unisexual, the male flowers are more in number than the female flowers and situated at the higher level. If the flower is the unisexual flower, then in anemophilous plants, the male flower will be more in number. As you know, male flower will require in a more number because more number of pollen grains is required in order to achieve the pollination. That is why there will be the more number of the male flowers as compared to the female flowers. And of course, they are situated at the higher level. Having the higher position in the flower gives the advantage to the male flower that whenever the wind comes, they first come into the contact in the upper layer of the flower. Now these flowers can easily shade out their pollen grains to the another flower due to their highly situated level, right? So in unisexual flowers, when the plant is an anemophilous plant, they ensure to have the more male flower than the female flowers, and the male flowers are always situated at the higher level. Now, the next floral adaptation in the anemophilous flower is the pollen grains are produced in an extremely huge number to compensate their wastage. Now, as you know, when we talk about the wind pollination, the pollen grains are traveled through the wind. And while travel through the wind, there is a very big chance that all these pollen grains will not reach to the stigma. And many of these pollen grains will go in a waste. That is these pollen grains wasted themselves along the journey to the stigma. As you can observe in this picture, there are the numerous and the huge number of pollen grains are present because these pollen grains should have the very large number because this can add advantage to the wind pollination because in the wind pollination the many pollen grains tends to get wastage, and these large number of pollen grains can ensure that some of the pollen grains will reach to the stigma of the another flower. So this is an again very important floral adaptation which is found in the anemophilous flower, that they produce the very large number of pollen grains to compensate their wastage during the wind pollination. All right. Now the next important floral adaptation is the pollen grains are very small, smooth walled, pale yellow in color and light in weight. Now this makes sense. As the pollen grains are small in size, they will have the very low weight. Now having the very low weight, they can easily be flown away by the wind. That is, as these plants are wind pollinated, the size and the weight of the pollen grains should be the less so that the wind can take them to the another flower. If you find the heavy pollen grain, then such a heavy pollen grain cannot be flown away by the wind. Having the lighter and small pollen grain adds advantage in the wind pollination. That is why the Anemophilous plants shows the small and light in weight pollen grains. Generally, they are pale yellow in color. The next adaptation in the Anemophilous flower is that their stigma is large, feathery, or hairy, bears long styles to trap the pollen grains. Again, all these adaptations are very natural because stigma should be the large in size. Because larger the stigma, larger will be the chances that there will be the landing of the pollen grains. And it is feathery or hairy in structure. This again adds advantage because the hairy stigma can hold the pollen grains which are landed on the stigma for a longer time because hair can trap all these pollen grains on the stigma and they will not flown away again by the wind. So having hairy stigma is again advantageous for the anemophilous plants. So in the floral adaptations of the anemophilous flower, the stigma is large, feathery or hairy and bears the long style to trap the pollen grains. So all this is about the anemophilous plants. I hope you like this lecture. Please like the video. Share this video with your friends who are studying the botany. And if you have any question, please make sure to comment in the comment box. And please subscribe to the Botany Option channel for UPSC examination. Again, thank you very much for watching this video. See you in the next one.